I'm also searching for how you could try and get resources into your business. So it's you know, in a way, because we were looking at resources last time, but in a way we want to try and make sure that everything's working really well, and people are putting that a little bit more in because you're showing that leadership style. You know, so if you could search for that during the process of doing this. And try, and the same for you as well. You know, searching for that leadership that can bring people in who will buy into the whole idea of what you're trying to achieve. You know, who will probably do things for free because they're actually buying into the values. Or you know, I can see that very strongly with your stuff. You know, or buying into the whole. This, you know, you've got some stakeholders like you mentioned, dry cleaners, etc. Oh, this is big contract stuff. This could be big stuff for us in the future. This is important to work with this new young Turk, if you don't mind me calling it that. You know, like this guy's got energy, and it's going to be important for us for future business, etc.
That's how I've negotiated my discount with them to get to your price.
Yes, well done. Yeah. Well, I'd like to know more about that. Yeah. Let's have a look at yours.
Well, the project is the exports to the UAE that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm pulling all my contacts and things. So a big one for me is the Department of International Trade, that I'm getting them to buy into this opportunity and invest some money and helping me out to develop the contract. So it's just getting them to really buy into my vision and keep supporting me. I'm also aiming to work with a marketing company that they offered. They've kind of mentioned that if it's a good, they kind of saw a potential of my brand and they would like to kind of work on it, even if it doesn't mean much money at the moment. So I'm gonna aim to kind of pin them down and say, okay, you know, work with me, and it would mean a lot in the future. I got too many, so I'll be talking for ages.
No, that's okay. And I think that's a really good one. Pin them down. You bring them out. You bring them out into try and make them help you more.
Yeah.
You know, is what I'm trying to find. And those stakeholder groups just, you know, take one each individually and say, well, how am I going to negotiate this through in order for them to support my goals? You know?
Yeah. I just need a lot of people to really understand my vision, because I have found that it has been hard as a startup to get people to really understand what am I trying to do, because it's quite messy and I haven't had the traction yet. So I found that perhaps it's not as easy as you would have thought, that people will just understand like that.
No, they're not.
But since I have had lots of interest recently and the business seems to be growing, I am finding it a bit easier to communicate that vision and to get people to buy into that.
Have you got a website?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'd like to have a look at that website. Have you written it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. No, I'd like to have a look. Because one thing, the reason why I said that was in part because when I was writing the Crowd It, Build It website, this crowdfunding, I found myself getting more and more into the presenting things as a belief. You know, it wasn't just a website with information on it. It was actually, this is the vision.
Yeah.
And it's that's we've shared with a lot of people, and people have said, "Oh God, you can see what you know." They buy into not just the website itself, but the vision that I developed partly because I wrote the website. You know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It's just to get people to understand what you're doing, it's quite difficult. I don't know. I found that maybe because it's a foreign product and people don't really get it.
Yeah. Okay, let's see how you get on this week and this month, and it'll be fascinating to see. And your area, what's?
So my task is to interact with some influential bloggers, and some other Instagram mums.
So it's part of your social media campaign.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to do that all online?
Yeah, so we're reaching out to them via Instagram, and sending them emails, that kind of thing.
Is that by choice? Because online is, you know, what this could transpire into is leadership online, which is actually quite an interesting challenge, I think. But the media, the media, online media, is not always as good as face to face in that sense.
I guess it's more to do with location, and that I'm here. A lot of these bloggers are down in London.
Yeah.
Or scattered around. Yeah, I mean, they don't dish out a phone number or an address. You can't knock on the door.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of behind a computer screen.
Mm. So you're going to have a go at bringing them in.
Yes. So I've just
through the media.
Yeah. Obviously, selling them my story and the backstory of why I came up with a product. The USPs, the fact it's made in Britain. I guess it also provides them an opportunity to engage with their audience, exposing a new product. So they're engaging their audience, which they want to do.
Are you going to be able to communicate what's in it for them through the media sufficiently?
Well, I think all these bloggers and Instamums are looking for new products to promote. To content. They need, content is the right word. They need to be feeding this machine.
That's quite an important point then. It's their need that you've got to be identifying. And trying to articulate. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't need to. But it sounds like that it's that their need that we've got to really work on.
Amongst their world, they want to be the first person to be talking about a cool, niche, funky product. Everyone goes, "Oh wow!"
Mm.
It's just, I guess, it's a bit of a fame-hungry, glory. Massage my ego,
Okay.
I believe. I don't know much about it.
So, do you think over the month you could have a go at each of these areas? Just see whether you can pull people into that vision as a good. Now, I also have this stakeholder matrix. There's one or two other bits and bobs I'd like to go through on the slide. Just going back to leadership in more general terms for a second. I dare say you have, but you've studied the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You know, are you off now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll
It's really great
see you
to
next
meet
month.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sorry to have to head off.
No, it's okay. We're going to finish soon.
I just think I should get them out, otherwise...
Definitely, business comes first. Okay, just a couple of other models and frameworks. This is the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And I found this useful in some contexts, and it's quite an old framework, etc. But it's the idea that actually individuals have different forms of need in their different situations. You know, in my case, in the 3D printing business, as you know, I employ NEETs. Okay, and to some extent, their needs are quite basic. You know. They actually appreciate being employed. It's almost like their needs are sort of halfway in here, which, if you can't read it or if you haven't got the slides in front of you, it means belongingness. Their needs are quite simple. They need to feel as a team, belonging to a team. And I find that sometimes the people I work with in there, because they're technical, they don't seem to see this, you know. They see it all as technical solutions, etc. But these individuals, they're only looking for sort of like belongingness and possibly a little bit of esteem, you know, the idea that they actually are valued, you know. And it's a very simple thing. And when they feel that, the energy levels go up. It's surprising, and they come out of themselves and they actually start really enjoying working there. Whereas if we didn't work towards bringing that out, right, in our leadership sort of approach, they'd be sat there all day not doing anything because they're not interested. So I refer to this Maslow hierarchy of needs, and it's very simple. It's really rather basic. The idea that we have at the bottom level, the basic needs that we need to live, food, clothing, whatever, then we've got safety, but then the top three are more interesting. Belongingness to a given team, to make sure that the team is working well. I've got lots of stories about this belongingness thing as well, and how managers sometimes do it completely wrongly. I had a lovely experience in the health services some years ago, because as a consultant I do, or have done in the past, process improvement work in the health services. And one of the things that I noticed was that some of the nursing staff, I was asking some of the nursing staff about how they were working, and one member of staff said to me, the best working day I've ever had was when the management screwed up. And I thought, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, what happened was that we were so short of staff, we all got really angry about it, and we ended up working all day and going out for some beers afterwards. And that was a great day's work, I thought, well, hang on, that doesn't quite make sense, in a way. But on the other hand, it did make sense, because she was expressing the camaraderie of a team, coming together, because they were angry about the crap management in the place. I think we've all experienced things like that. She described that as one of the best days of work she's ever done, ironically. So that was a story of belongingness, and I think if you can nurture that in your staff and or with people around you, I think that can be real energising. Esteem, of course, with the NEETs, they come with very low self-esteem, and that's mainly their problem. And what I think we try and do is try and make sure that we're highly respectful of them. I'm not entirely sure that always happens, but that's what I think we should be trying to achieve. And then self-actualisation, really that like some people get to a position where it's the actualisation of some superior goals that is going to really drive them forward. Like level 5. The other model that I wanted to, or this framework, and I know it's a bit of a daft framework, it's very simple really, but when people are trying to accept change, in every situation you have to give people the license, the responsibility. Now, in problem solving and trying to change things, it works like this. So you've got to have almost like acceptance, or we've got to understand what the problem is, and then people have got to accept the problem. When I was doing work in the health services, I had this very situation where we had a bunch of porters in the hospital. Now, porters in a hospital are really important, because they're the lifeblood of things. If the porter in services didn't work, you wouldn't have the machines to do the operations, You wouldn't have the information to do the operations. They move things around and make things happen. So the porter in services are absolutely key to the operation of a hospital. But unfortunately, we have this hierarchical sort of structure in organisations, and they are the lowest ranked type community group. And I remember the situation where we had some process problems in certain processes, and to a large extent we knew if we could get the portering staff to work differently, we could make the change significantly easier, But of course, how do you make people change their working patterns, or working life or approach? That's not easy. People don't. on the whole, people won't change. And this is where, in the coming month, we might want to just explore how you conduct yourself to improve their change options. And this is what the sort of theory says. First of all, the people that you're trying to interact with to change, they need to understand the problem itself. So you're having to pose the problem. Right? Because ultimately they've got to accept a certain change to their own working habits, tasks or behaviours that's actually going to make that change. Right? So we've got to pose it to them, explore it with them, explore the problem with them, and they have to find a level at which they can accept the nature of the problem that you're presenting to them. So pose the problem at the bottom, acceptance of the problem, and then you get into a situation where you're exploring potential solutions. Now, they won't change if you tell them what to do, but what they will do is respond to a level of respect, a hierarchy of needs, in trying to identify what those potential solutions are. And if they accept the potential solution, you've got a good chance that the changed action will occur. And that goes out to the hierarchy, the top of that little hierarchy. So you're posing the problem, you're having to try and explore whether or not acceptance of the problem as couched in the language that you presented it is appropriate. You pose some solutions, acceptance of the solutions, and then you can get the change going. You know, just five levels of change, really. And this is what I use a lot in consultancy. Okay, intervention. Right? And this is where I'll leave it for today. I'll just talk you through this idea. I often think of it like this, right? And I don't know if this will help. You're going to try and change a situation, really, with your key stakeholders, with your groups of people, with your management or leadership styles. You know, you're going to change the situation. Now, I always think of it in about 6 things. There's only 6 things that you can really change. Right? But this is what you're going to try and work on, which each of those stakeholders are going to try and change their attitude to change certain things. First of all, you're going to be working towards trying to change their attitude so it's more constructive for you. Right? So your interaction with them, the way you conduct yourself with them to help them see what you need in terms of their attitudes towards what you're trying to achieve is going to be key. You know? So, attitudes of people. So the 6 are attitudes of people, knowledge and skills, activities and tasks, communication, power, control and roles and relationships. I think there's about 6 or 7 there. Okay. So the first thing is, when you're a leader or when you're trying to lead in a given situation that you've all described, you're going to have to try and make sure people have the right attitude. Right? You're going to have to find a way to present that to them so that they can see the attitudes that you need to achieve the task. Knowledge and skills. Right? That's another area of problem. You know, when we were working with the porters, for example, the attitudes were completely wrong. And often, in order to fulfil things, do things properly, they needed certain knowledge and skills, which they might not always have. So the question is whether or not those individuals, those groups, those stakeholders actually have the appropriate knowledge and skills that you need to make it work. Activities and tasks, who does what when type of thing, you know, and making sure all of that works. The communication between people, making sure that works. Communication actually is there's 2 things I would say about communication. Firstly, sometimes it's simple communications. Have you done this? Or, you know, when you the sort of everydayness of communication. But a lot of the communication is highly cultural as well. So, you know, you go into into a health services with a big, massive hierarchical organisation, communication works in a particular form. Whereas in a small business it would be completely different. There's quite a cultural change in there. So, but you've got to find the right communications to make things work. Information, obviously people need the information at the right time. Power structures. Control, to make sure you know what isn't working, if it's not working. And then roles and relationships. And I use those 7 things, and I sort of think about them in terms of each key stakeholder. What is it that I need from them in order to make the whole system work in effect? So that's how I sort of structure out leadership in a way. I'm hoping that you'll go this month and have a go at it now. You know, just have a go at certain things. See if you can make things work better for you by making those interventions. Right? So there's 2 tasks. One is a negotiation of some sort, and write down the results or the way you conducted them in your workbook, and then this one leadership test to see if you can get that going as well. I honestly think this area is really powerful, but it will challenge you, or it tends to challenge everybody, because it takes you out of your comfort zone, you know, sometimes. So if you stay in your comfort zone, you're doing things wrong. You know, if you're feeling a bit anxious about it, that's probably expected, you know, so don't worry. Okay. Has anybody got any questions or points you would raise on what I've tried to present?
Are there any book recommendations that you have for the topic?
I've got loads actually. I've got loads of books on leadership. Yeah, at home. There are some classics. Sometimes they're a bit heavy. I personally probably there's a writer called Northhouse, very famous book on in leadership itself. There's actually a consultancy book that I think is really well worth a read. It's more consultancy and it does have a lot of leadership in it. It's called A Consultant's Journey. And it's very thoughtful and thought-provoking. And it's his sort of journey in consultancy, in complex, messy situations, and how he brings things to make things work. And it's a guy called Harrison. Wrote it about 20 years ago. It's quite a neat little book, that. But I can give you the full reference at a later stage, possibly. Some of the more academic books, you might have heard of Edgar Schein.
About, yeah.
Edgar Schein wrote some years ago that really good. John Adair might be quite good. You know, he's written quite a lot. Probably download it from the internet. John Adair.
I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's
good.
Negotiation.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what we need to do as new businesses. You know.
How to Win Friends
And Influence People. I think it was written in the 30s.
Yeah, it's really old.
It's quite sold quite a few million copies, isn't
it? Yeah.
But his examples still work in modern day context.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's still I found it very relevant.
Yeah, on that, and another old book from 1959, I think it was something called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. That was quite. Yeah, it's slightly overly academic, I think, but it was really interesting, because what he did was he sort of like saw every social situation as a sort of staged play, you know, and what roles people were taking in a given social situation, and having to utilise that in everyday situations, presenting the self to actually also not just be part of that, but actually change that, you know, in that way. That was Irving Goffman. That was quite a good book. You probably get it for next to nothing on second-hand bookstores. But these are maybe some of them, those that I've just mentioned, are maybe a little bit heavy. But I mean, assuming that we're on a journey, hopefully for more than just a few weeks, you know, well worth getting hold of some of these things.
Yeah.
Can really improve our approach, you know. But I can get you a fuller list. I've got plenty of them. You know.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna shut up now and let you go into this beautiful day. If there's any problems during the month, just drop me a line. You know, I'm currently using my personal account at the moment, which I'll give to you. You could just take a note down.
John, I was going to mention 2 more things.
Oh yeah, go on.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on Steve Jobs as a leader? See, I had initially I thought of him as being a good leader, like in the speeches and things that he's done. However, when like just chatting to staff at the Apple shop, they had a different opinion of him, that he wasn't very nice with people and things. So that was quite surprising.
Yeah, I don't know enough about him. I couldn't really comment. You know, he obviously did an amazing things in his lifetime.
Yeah, I think he's achieved a lot. I still see him as a good leader, I think. Because I think he was a leader at the front, not a leader at the back. Have you heard of the leader at the front and back?
Yeah.
I think I'm more of a leader at the back because I'm like, oh, you alright? But wanting to make sure people are okay. Whereas I think he was ruthless and just got things done.
Yeah. Napoleon or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yes, I mean, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. I wouldn't really like to hazard a guess because I don't really know that much about him.
Yeah.
Well, what was your second area? You said you had 2 questions.
Alright, okay. So it was the type of leaderships. Leader at the front and back.
Oh, I see,
whether you'd come across that.
No, absolutely, yeah. There's that in the literature.
Is there?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And if you're one, what you like? Are you a better
or worse? I don't think it's quite as simple as that. But I would probably say carefully nurturing people to ensure that things work well is a leader from the back.
Yeah.
You know. I think it's very interesting that. And we probably could improve. I mean, if you think you're a leader from the back, why don't you try leading from the front to change it?
Yeah.
Gets you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something a bit more related to me, right?
Yeah, sure.
Talking about negotiations and stuff like that, I have been approached by...
Right. A nice small session.
Yes.
Right. Right. Where do we need to go? Today we're going to be actually looking at negotiation, and for your purposes, I'd just like, if that's all right, just slightly introduce myself and to where I'm coming from, you know, as it were, and why I'm doing this type of stuff. I'm sort of an academic at the university, and I say sort of because I have fingers in lots of pies, you know. I have started a number of different businesses, and the latest one is essentially a crowdfunding of property development, business. So it actually crowdfunds property development, so the costs of build. We're just in the middle. I also have a 3D printing business, which is down in the Wicker somewhere, and I've been involved in setting up businesses and doing business for quite a long time, and I've really enjoyed it, and I have a lot of inspiration for the whole idea of it. you know, that gives me lots of energy, I suppose. I combine that with the academic side, which is actually also gives me the theoretical sort of side, I guess. I mean, if you want to call business having to have a theoretical side, there are obviously concepts, ideas, principles, techniques, tools, etc., methodologies. So I sort of combine it with that. The latest venture at the moment is this crowdfunding property development. We're building 6 houses up in Winkerbank at the moment. The diggers are in the ground, as it were. You know,
Exciting.
yeah, it is exciting. But the unique thing about this was that we crowdfunded the cash to do it. So the money is not coming from some bank; it's coming from individuals in the crowd. You know, now that financial model, I believe, is something that is actually quite unique. And having gone through it for 2 years to work out how to structure the financial side to conform to the law and financial regulation has been an exceedingly interesting but very problematic sort of journey. Now we've got something unique in the market. We're going to be. I was just talking to Arup, which is a company in Sheffield, big large company in Sheffield. We're going to actually try and get it going on 20 sites in the next year. So that's in the region of, you know, I would probably say.
Apologies.
That's okay, don't worry, come in.
Thank you.
Yeah, you sit there.
It was eventful, wasn't it? Because they didn't let me bring my car in because of the fire
Because of the fire alarm, yeah, I know, it was a nightmare.
I saw you guys walk past and I was like, ah.
Yeah. So, anyway, so that's broadly me, and I continue to work with new businesses, etc. I run this and related sort of programs because, to some extent, it gives me networks. You know, networks of people who are doing business and collaborations, etc., which is always interesting. And the other thing is that I'm always looking for opportunities to raise cash. For example, from you know, to help the businesses. So I'm quite well connected into the financial structures which small businesses require sometimes, and including. And I was just talking to Mary about the Innovate UK opportunities that are around at the moment. So we can discuss that as well. So the objective is to put some ideas into the fray whilst we're developing our businesses, explore how we can apply those ideas, and a lot of those ideas are models, frameworks, techniques, tools, ideas, etc., that you might want to use. And every time you come to one of these sessions, you get a little workbook, and we're expecting you to take the ideas that I present and then actually apply them to your own business. And today we're going to be looking at leadership and negotiation. Last week we looked at resources and capabilities and linked that to your strategic objectives. Last session we had, you weren't here on
No,
that
but
session.
we did a catch-up session.
Did you? Yeah, okay. I mean, the point of that was really to say, okay, what are our core business goals here? Where is our strategy? And how do we translate that into analysis of what we've got as a company in terms of resources and capabilities to fit that strategy? And I gave the example of my 3D printing business, okay, which only started 3 years ago, so it's a brand new startup. But 18 months ago, or 2 years ago or so, we developed our own strategy. Now, in 3D printing, you might have heard of it, I don't know if you've ever come across it.
Heard of.
Yeah, I'll show you some pictures of it. In 3D printing, there's lots and lots of new technologies, and lots of people are dabbling around. It's like a brand new sort of area, and nobody knows what the market is really at this point in time. And lots of people have built their own printers, or you know, and it's a little bit like the early days of computing. In the early days of computing, everybody was dabbling around with a little computer and, you know, doing this, that, and the other. Probably most of it useless, and that's how 3D printing really is at this moment in time. Now, we knew that the strategic thing that we decided to do was this: that we knew that there was a lot of competition to do the printing service. If you go around Sheffield, you could probably find 20 different people or organisations doing it. Some in the back bedroom, some a bit more than that, etc. But we never thought that space had enough cash in it for us, and that was the dilemma. So strategically, we decided that we were going to make those people our customers, not rivals in the market. So what we did, we started the retail side of the business. Now the retail side of the business was always just to make sure that we had power in the market, power in the marketplace. Okay, because there's loads of people coming in and out of the market, suppliers, etc. But we wanted to supply to all the suppliers because that would give us stability. That's how we saw it. I mean, I'm not saying it's 100% worked, etc., but it has to a large extent. So the rivals for the printing services in one space are our customers as well now. Setting up the retail side has been quite hard, and I think maybe you might all be in sort of a form of retail in a sense.
Yeah.
Now what I found was that we had to buy stock and hold stock. So we had to learn quite a lot, and we identified, and this is what the subject matter of last session's event was, what do we need to have in place in order to achieve what our strategic goals are? What capabilities have we got? What knowledge have we got? And what resources have we got available, really? And when you start a new business, you've got very little of any of those. So we've got to try and find ways to get those resources or get them in. What we did was it was quite interesting because when we first started, we didn't know what the market was going to be like. We had no idea. And we advertised some of these filaments, what we call filament materials that go into the printers. You can think of it like in a Hewlett Packard, when you get the toner cartridges. For 3D printers, it's called filament. So we started selling those, just had a go, really. And it was really interesting because that first weekend when we just had a go, we put some on, and they sold like a flash. And I was like, what? There must be quite a market here, So we tried it again. It sold like a flash, Then we tried a few more colours because you can get them on all sorts of colours, and they did as well, on the whole. So we started building it up, and of course we're looking very carefully at the profit levels. So you've got to build up your what you're selling, the stock, and that's hard. Because every time you sell, you've got to buy again, and you've got to get that right, otherwise, and according to how much you're selling it, etc. Now, I found that was a really tough exercise because we were expanding, and we knew we were expanding. We could tell, but just because of the racks in the place, but we couldn't always tell the profitability, So we were having to put money into stock, cash into stock, so it's in stock there, and that's called working capital. Our working capital was trying to grow in order to get our profitability up. That was a really hard thing. But anyway, I suppose 2 years later, we've worked it. We did take some financial loans out as well, because as soon as we saw the profitability there, we knew that was a possibility. So we applied, etc., and got some extra working capital. And now we're just about to move into a big warehouse because we've got a building with 9 rooms at the moment, and it's just too small. So we've got this new warehouse.
But you started just online, or?
Yeah, we started most of the retail side started with things like eBay and Amazon. We've got our own retail shop. Now I think there's about 5 web shops. One's French, Amazon, eBay, plus our own web shops as well. So we've actually got 5. So what happens with 5 web shops is that you're selling out there, when you're sleeping, and that's what I quite like, So you come in the morning, and the guys take off all the sales. We've got a list of them, and then of course we need to either pack them up or send them out or whatever it needs to be done with those. I would probably say on average now we have 200 orders a day. It's quite a lot. So we've got we took on a young person to help us do the packing and neat. So I'm very, very pleased that he's now bedded in, and that's a good resource as well for a small business, because what we had was this young person. We made a few mistakes, and I'll go back to that in a few moments. But we got a young person in for 6 months, and that his wage was covered for that 6 months, and that was a really important step, because we couldn't afford him at first, basically. But after 6 months, you can. Well, you know, assuming that your strategy is right and your growth and sales can, and etc. But we did make some mistakes. We took on 3 needs actually, one at a time. The first one dropped out after about a day. The second one dropped out after a couple of weeks, and the third one was really quite good. So I wouldn't say ever that it was a walk in the park. It's quite hard. And my problem is that I'm not a university academic. I can't spend enough time there, and the guys who work there full time are engineers. And so the engineering approach to the world isn't necessarily bringing him on sufficiently well. You know, so there's all sorts of tensions, because we've got great capability in technical terms, but not really human terms. You know, so that was that little part of the story, and I think growing businesses is really tough, but really interesting. You know, and of course we all have, I think, a little bit of a reason for doing it. Sometimes it's a highly altruistic reason, which I think yours is. You know, other times it's more of a, well, it might give me something in the long term, you know, security and or pay the mortgage or whatever else, you know. And a lot of people, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs like you, in my opinion, are people who need their freedom, or want their freedom. They're not really people who want to be employed in a sort of normal way for one reason or another. Maybe that's lifestyle reasons, or it might be other reasons as well. So that's why people, I think, start their own businesses, and they start small. They have an idea. They usually have some form of product idea, but it's got to you've got to nurture it and develop it, and it's sometimes not obvious what you need to do to make it all work. That's my experience and my for what it's worth. Now, one thing that we're going to do today is I want to go through what we call leadership and negotiation, okay, which will probably take you out of your comfort zone to some extent. And I think that's inevitable with leadership and negotiation. I won't start now on that area, but I will just say that myself and my other business in the Crowded Build It business, we've been working very hard on our negotiations, because we've got a whole set of suppliers who drive a really hard bargain. You know, negotiation to me is absolutely key, because in a funny sort of way, getting a good negotiation brings you in the resources that you need, you know, into a given situation. I could not start that crowdfunding business. You can imagine the complexity of it. I'm not just building houses, I'm actually crowdfunding the money for the building of the houses. Now, one person can't do that. Myself and my business partner, we just could not do that without a lot of support. You know, I've had lawyers working for us, I've had accountants working for us, I've had legal advisors working for us, I've had building contractors and building, you know, working for us. And you know, we have no resources, you know. I mean, like any other new business, it's got no resources. We can't just sort of pull in, oh right, let's just pay that accountant, you know, £6,000 that they're asking. You know, You can't do it as a small business. So you've got to negotiate to try and find a way forward, always. And I think the negotiation thing, I mean, I'm not saying we've been perfect in all that we've done, but we've actually managed to get a situation where we're building, you know, £750,000 worth of houses, you know, from nothing, you know. And that, I think, is because of the negotiations that we've been making, you know, because we're pulling in resources into our situation. People actually working for us basically because they can see something at the end, you know. The lawyers, for example, have worked so hard on making sure that we're conforming to the legal structures. And they have put into place a massive big set of documentation, which is, I won't bore you with the details, but it's actually really complicated legal stuff. The documents are really big. And they've done that for a couple of £1,000, you know. I mean, if I'd gone to a lawyer and said, I want that, at the beginning, they'd say, oh yeah, you know, it's probably £35,000 to get that all sorted out, you know. But I think because we've been a new startup, we've been promising a business that actually will grow, and they can see that. And we've been negotiating around this to make them and help them and, you know, get them on board. And I think that that's what a good negotiation is all about. And that's what I think we should have a look at today, if that's all right. You know, we're going to look at negotiation in the morning for an hour or two, and then we're going to look at leadership as well, which go hand in hand. The second part will be looking at how we sort of pull people into our vision, you know. How do we lead, you know, because actually a lot of the time that's what you need as a small business. If we're going to get a strategy for the, let's say the 3D printing business or any of your businesses, we've got to find ways to get resources into it in some way, you know. That might be cash resources like applying for funds, but it might be also just negotiations and leadership type styles, and that's what I'd like to concentrate on for a few hours, okay, and see what happens. I'm expecting to finish quite early as well today, so a couple of hours before lunch, we'll have a very quick lunch, and a couple of hours after, that's it, okay. Now, on the desk you'll see the workbook, so we're going to work through this workbook. Would it be, I know that you've introduced each other to some extent this morning, but would it be a good idea just to spend 5 minutes just going around the group and just explaining what you've been doing? I'm aware that you don't know.
Oh, we do.
Oh, you do? Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah. Is it helpful to do 5 minutes? Or should we just crack on?
Well, we know each other quite well. So
Okay.
just if you
I'll
want
tell you
to
what,
know about us.
have you got a strategic spider each?
Yeah, somewhat.
Let's have a look at one or two of those, because that might help you, Faye.
We were told to
Fill them in.
fill out the Mintzberg.
Yeah, good.
model.
Let's have a look at what you've done.
Okay.
Oh,
This is what Marina helped me. We did it in person.
oh right, okay. Can you talk us through this? Just for a minute or two.
Okay, so
If you remember.
Right, so market sector you've got here.
yeah, so the product is quite a niche, unique product, and we're definitely aiming for the more premium, boutique type market. So we're not aiming for mainstream Tesco's in your high street stores. It's definitely more of a premium, boutique edge product, and the brand is being built around that ethos. So there are other products in the pipeline that we can add on, just again to really to boost the business. It's more than just a one product, one trick pony product kind of business. So then we talked about how we're getting it into the market. We talked about bloggers and celebrity endorsements, maybe getting a distributor on board, licensing the brand. I didn't really do it in the spider form though.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's just the way we sort of suggested it. But.
So then we talked about the 3-year strategy that we might take on.
And what is the 3-year strategy?
So, so we've launched the first product is to bring out the natural rubber version of the teethers in this coming year, just to really, really grow the brand and add additional products into that.
Okay, so you've got a basic product, and then you've said something to do with going to bring in a rubber version.
Yeah, so there's a different type of material that you can use.
Could it be 3D printed?
No.
That was a joke.
Maybe.
It just allows you to paint the product, which is safe for babies to then put in their mouth.
Right.
It's much more visually pleasing.
Right.
But then I guess the idea really is to hopefully, probably more than 3 years, maybe 5 years, is to license the product so you can ideally, do a Peppa Pig. Just a big mass. But that's the end game.
That would be sort of like a franchise or something.
Licensing, I think, is the phrase that's.
Yeah. Okay. But that's the end game. So what's the short game? Yeah.
Well, it's just building that brand awareness and gradually and slowly getting our product into the market.
Could you write a story on Squidge and Pip?
Yeah, I could try.
Yeah, because then you're combining the strengths.
Yeah.
You could be. I mean, your business is around storytelling for helping disabled children. Is that right?
Yeah.
And there's publicity in it. You could be writing the stories and putting them online, because we were talking about putting them online and linking together to build a brand. Anyway, it's just a thought, really.
We've got one story written already. A friend of mine does something similar. I mean, it is all around, again, just having really good ethics of the brand and the business.
Yeah.
Okay, we obviously want to make money to survive and to make a living, but it has to have a real heart and meaning behind it.
Yeah. Of course, you could, like a lot of us,
We're not going to be a commercial engine that just churns out stuff to make money. We're made in the UK for a reason.
Yeah,
there's good ethics behind what we do.
Yeah. But I think that ethical side can sell as well. It's not I think leaning on the ethical dimensions is a good sell.
It's a point of difference, isn't it?
Yeah. But the idea of getting publicity, I think, is what I think you're focusing in on. You've changed the product slightly, but you're really pushing the branding and the web presence and stuff like that. I think that's what you're saying. Okay. So what's your business? Okay.
So it's called Bear Hugs. I sell gift hampers that you can order online and send directly to someone through the post. It's all online at the moment. I started on Etsy. I have a small Amazon shop, and I go 90% of my sales now through my own website.
Right, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
To drive you traffic to your own website is major. It's quite hard, that.
So social media has been important. I've not been as active on it lately as I should have been because I've been busier and it's dropped off.
Very hard to keep that.
I find it really hard to maintain it. But the thing about the product is that, so someone sends it to someone, the recipient is then a new person exposed to the brand. And I have quite a lot of people who then go on to buy one themselves who have received them. So that's been sort of helping with the growth at the moment.
Sounds like a model that you could use, then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're actually in a similar market, actually, I think, as well, because you're gifts, which is interesting. There must be synergy there.
Yeah, and what I was actually thinking is that your products would be amazing things to have within the boxes if they fitted. It's just at the moment your price point is a little bit higher than fits with my products as they are. But I've recently just had my packaging redesigned with design features. Well, actually, you as well.
We've all used them.
Oh, really?
I'm hoping, I'm hoping that with the new packaging, I I'm going to start to introduce sort of higher value boxes as well, and then I can introduce the more luxury gifts within them. So they're around themes, but most people send them to say thinking of you or get well soon, but people also send them to say happy birthday or congratulations or get a new baby, just because as well. Reasons.
It's interesting, isn't it? It just seems to be so many synergies, just searching for them, you know. And then, of course, we could even negotiate how that would work, you know. But I'm not saying that will be the subject of today. And yours, did you ever do that big order? No, you didn't.
It was just too difficult. Too many people involved who wanted.
I was a bit frightened when I was.
It was a bit too big for me. I think I couldn't.
I just was worried that there might be some other things going on underneath the skin of it, you know.
They did the deal, but with somebody else.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
They did it.
All right.
But
okay.
it wasn't with me.
So your business is selling
panela, which is a natural alternative to sugar from Colombia.
Yeah.
So it's a natural sugarcane juice dehydrated.
Yeah.
So I sell it with my own brand. I sell it in 250 grams and 500 grams bags, and that has done quite well. I sell few online, not as much as Faye, of course, but I sell online, and I'm looking into getting those into supermarkets.
Yeah. So your strategy is to get into supermarkets?
Yes.
That's hard, I think.
It is. My strategy wasn't that before, because I thought going into supermarket was really, really hard. So because of feedback from people who I was getting from food markets, I started making drinks. One of them is a cold brew coffee, which is a very trendy drink at the moment. So I started making those drinks thinking getting my panela in bags will be really hard. I'm going to have to sell wholesale, which seemed to be maybe easier. That's why that day I was doing what I was doing. But I went to a trade show in Dubai, and I had the opportunity to go on a trade visit to lots of supermarkets and had the opportunity to speak to buyers, and they were all really interested in my product, in Carrefour, Waitress in Dubai. So I thought, actually this is not too difficult if you are faced with the right person who is the buyer. It's not too difficult. It's just in the UK there are too many barriers for people to access those buyers. So since that moment I kind of clicked and thought, actually this is not too hard. Thinking outside UK might be easier. So I'm already kind of heading into that direction.
If you head in that direction though, you are not selling panela, you're distributing, aren't you? You're importing distribution.
I'm importing, but it's my brand.
Yeah.
So the supermarkets will not do it white label.
Of course. Yeah.
It's my brand, which is what I kind of have worked really hard to grow. And of course it's panela, but I don't produce panela. It's produced in Colombia.
Of course, yeah.
And what have been lacking in Colombia is to have that brand that carries on panela around the world, because we just buy it in the supermarket like in white bags. Nobody has put, the effort of making it a fancy product,
Yeah.
So my final kind of strategy is to make my drinks using panela instead of sugar. But I see that it's easier, I'm flexible, thinking I'm gonna do whatever is easier in the market. So if the panela itself with my brand in my little bags is gonna sell okay in the retail market, I do that, and then. So
is your strategy then go for B2B markets, business to business, really, basically, and getting to a point where that brand is having some value to those people who actually do the selling?
Yeah.
Really, okay. Now that's quite interesting. So you're really basically importing your brand. I mean, I assume that it's made in the same factory as white label.
Yeah. Wholesale.
Yeah. So you're importing it, putting your branding on it, and then distributing it to others.
That's what I have been doing for the past year, just importing it in bulk.
Yeah.
And repackaging it in my bags with my brand, with my story and all that.
Can you get the packaging done by
I
the suppliers?
Yeah, I just managed to get, because when I had all the buyers in Dubai saying we want the product, when can you send? And I was like, came back to UK thinking I'm gonna just collapse because I don't have the working capital to go and buy in bulk, get a company here in the UK to repackage it. So I spoke to my suppliers and they are happy to be like a business partner, and they put all the funding, all the packaging with my brand and everything, and then I pay them when I get paid from the supermarket. So we kind of gonna work as a
that would be amazing if you could achieve that.
Yeah.
Because in fact you don't need the working capital.
Yeah, but I will have to share the profit.
But yeah. It doesn't matter. If you're making lots of money, share the profit.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I wasn't sure. I was like, oh my god, maybe this is too big. But if you just don't go for it, I don't know.
We'll have to look at the financial side on that as well, and how that all and it's basically a supply chain problem as far as I can see. You've got a really classic supply chain analysis type aspect to do. You might have already done it.
Well, what I see it is I import it already packaged and in my brand and everything, get a warehouse in the UK where everything comes in and I distribute. So I control all the kind of buyers and whatever, and I distribute to the supermarkets.
That's good. So at what stage are you at now? Have you actually got a warehouse or you...
I'm looking for a warehouse, but everything is kind of very quickly.
Yeah, and it's all interconnected. You can't do one without the other. You've got to have your market ready, and you've got to have all the supply chain ready.
So what I thought is I get the buyers first, and then I worry about the rest, because it's all the work that I've been doing very slowly, getting brand awareness, working on how am I gonna do this.
You've got a website?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course you have.
Yeah. So now that I got the potential buyers, then I'm gonna work backwards to get the product. I don't know. It's
hard. It's hard. That's what we're going to subject to analysis.
I need negotiation.
Yeah. Well, no, yes, we do need that, but we also need to know. Remember maybe the first session that you were at, we were actually discussing the idea of what is it now as a system, really, because you're going to be having to implement quite a complex system here, importing, distributing, labelling and getting your customers from a B2B customers is quite tricky, to do on your own. But I'm not saying it's impossible. No, it's certainly not impossible, because I mean, what does the 3D printing business do? Well, it actually imports. It does exactly what you're doing. It imports it, and a lot of the brand, the brand that we're developing is called Precision Maker, and the boxing and all the branding is done by the suppliers, from around the world. Yeah, that's coming into now our new warehouse, and then we're going to be distributing it to end users. Really, we're not at this point in time, we're not a B2B business, we're B2C, but that's the big difference.
Yeah.
But it's not that much different, and they've started from scratch. Those guys.
Well, I've been B2C. All this time I've been going to food markets, I've been selling online, I've been going to pop-up shops and stuff. But I see the growth because it's all about volumes. My product is about volumes. I won't get those volumes if I'm not selling B2B.
Just one last thing whilst we're on yours, because I think this is a very interesting discussion, and I'd like to develop the discussion, but I want to also develop the other stuff. But I'd like to look at your margins, at some stage, because if you've got the margin there, then there's no reason why it won't work. But I fear that the margins might be quite tight, in which case it might be very difficult, or maybe might require a different type of strategy. But if your margins are reasonably good, I don't know what your margins you think you are on. But anyway, we can discuss that later. Okay. And your business, you have this passion for education.
Yeah.
you know, and what we discussed last time, as I understood it, was that your strategy was going to be, was it around, again, a form of branding. You know, you've got to develop your portfolio of products, but we were going to explore the tech side of that. Yeah. Because, I mean, I think the rationale, as I remember, and please correct me, but as I understood it, paper-based things are nowhere near as powerful as electronic-based.
Yeah.
Because electronic-based can go woof right around the world.
Mm-hmm.
If it pleases somebody, you know, you get all the hits, etc. And then suddenly, and you don't have the overhead that you would have in the distribution side of the stories.
Mm. And I was meant to email you about that contact, which I forgot to do. That was my action point that I've not.
Oh yes, John Rainford. Yes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I can put you in touch with him.
Yeah.
This guy he has what he calls what's it called now? A piece of technology that I thought might fit your and we could even possibly apply for the funding, the Innovate UK funding.
Yeah.
If, you never know. But this technology is sort of like where people interact with it in a slightly social media type way, and they can, for example, take the story and then actually recount the story or do certain things and put it back into this piece of technology, and he calls it the Darwin Matrix.
Okay.
And so you end up with a sort of like an area with the original in, and then an area for different activities around it, and then people just go in and out. I don't know. It might not be the kind of thing that you require, but it's worth
you
it.
may have other ideas or.
He's a consultant, so he probably is interacting with lots and lots of different people with different ideas. Anyway, that was where we ended up going. So we wanted to. Now, I'm not saying that this is the strategy, but it was a consideration. You've done that.
Oh, well, a bit of a spider diagram.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
With writing that only I can read, I think.
It's okay. But for phase benefits, this is how we conceptualise businesses as we're going through the journey of thinking through what our business is, what it needs to be in the future. So we end up with looking at these dimensions. Okay, so let's just take these sales dimensions. I think what you're saying here, you're identifying, perhaps your different types of markets or different people that you're selling to, but you're also trying to explore whether or not you might be able to expand those particular types of sales in certain areas. And so that's for phase benefit. These are what we call dimensions. And perhaps aspirations. You're looking at the products there, you're looking at the partnerships there, you're looking at employees and resources there, and we're trying to put a map together to say, okay, how are we going to get to each stage? So this is now, and then this is next year, or it could be any other period. It could be 3 months' time, but and this is the following year. And I often think sometimes a whole year, maybe if a small business is too much, you can't really plan more than a year to 2 years away, in my opinion. Unlike maybe bigger businesses, etc. But for small businesses, I find that as soon as you've made the plan, you've re-evaluated something, and it changes the business quite fundamentally. A little bit like yours. When I first met you, I think you were very much a B2C, but now you're sort of B2B.
It changes all the time.
And it probably will again, or it could change, or the B to B part might actually end up being another niche. There might be a niche in there. So I don't think it's valuable too much to have a grand vision of 3, 4, 5 years time. I think it's much more valuable to really have a look at what the business is now and what it needs to be, perhaps just in a year's time. And possibly too, you might have a longer vision, but sometimes everything changes by the time you go. The history of the 3D printing business was actually interesting in this regard, because what happened was, I told you all this, I think this story before. What happened was we were making, they're engineers, the guys, and we were making these 3D cameras 3G cameras. They fit on your lapel. So in other words, the camera was there, like for police, and it would go through the 3G network to a server, so it could capture onto the server immediately. Now the advantage for the police and other places like taxis and night porters or whatever is that it's capturing data. So if the device itself gets broken, it's still stored on the web somewhere, using 3G, and it's because as long as you've got 3G, it will work. Anyway, we built these cameras and it was fine, but then the client said, "Oh, can you build a case for it?" And we said, "Well, no, we can't build a case for it. We've got no knowledge of doing that." And so the client insisted. He said, "Well, it's in the contract." Well, it wasn't really actually, but he was getting really shirty with it, and we didn't really want to lose the client really at that time. So we said to him, "Well, listen, we'll go halves on a 3D printer, and we'll print the case." So that's what we did. I spent £5,000 on the first printer, and when one of the guys printed this case for this thing, it came out really bad. It was really rubbish, and so this guy started learning more about 3D printing. By the time a month had gone by, he really knew his stuff because he's an engineer, So about the 10th or 15th go at this turned out to be a really nice 3D printed case. So and then somebody else said to us, "Oh, you've done that? Oh, that's quite good. Can you print me one?" That's how it started, and that's what I mean. Small business starts, and you're exploring things, and then suddenly we realise there's more market in 3D printing than cameras.
So you're not doing cameras anymore?
No, we can do cameras, but we don't push it because we're too busy with the 3D printing. But in a funny sort of way, I think it's a journey, setting up a business, and that's classic. I think that's really classic of how it sometimes just happens.
Yeah, well, I was ready to give up my panela in bags. I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And everything is changing now, and maybe tomorrow I'll be like, I won't do that anymore. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, that's I think classic in a way. We've got to try and establish what it is that you can make money out of and can stabilise your business out of, really. And that, I think, is in part what this spider's about. Now, you sound as if you've gone down the lines. You've said it's 18 months old, but you've got a very strong sense of where you're going, I think, from what you said.
Yeah, I want to be able to, then this is one of the biggest driving forces for them to be able to offer part-time, flexible working opportunities to people who find themselves in a similar boat to I did, who have fluctuating long-term conditions. So when I'm thinking about growing it, I'm thinking about how I can offer those opportunities. And so in terms of scaling it up, it's factoring that in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. We all start with a sort of passion, don't we, somewhere? Because you couldn't start a business without a certain passion, And I think yours is, again, a bit like yours. You've got this real passion for making sure disability is represented properly to children, so that they can understand.
We've had first-hand experience, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that we need to work on those. We shouldn't just ditch them. We should work on them because that's the generating the energy force behind it. So. Anyway, should we have a look at a little bit of negotiation stuff? And as I say, I'm going to try and I've got a few slides I'd just like to show you. I'm going to ask you to think about a negotiation that you're going to do in this month. Right? If I can get this to work. And I'm going to give you the sort of like an outline of classic ideas about negotiation. Okay. Let's see if that gets right. Okay. So we've got the leadership part of what we're doing now of this day. Have you ever seen a good leader? Is somebody iconic to you in your past experience? You think, that's a good leader?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Princess Diana.
Oh.
Not in politics though. I've never seen a good leader. Not in politics, but Princess Diana, yeah.
What makes you say that? What's the characteristics that you thought showed good leadership in Princess
She
Diana?
led by example.
Yeah, and it was beauty from within, not just on the outside. It was her mannerisms, what she stood for, the way she was, her body language, her persona, what she did, everything, her brand, like everything about her.
Mm.
Although she wasn't...
That's very interesting you should say about the inside.
Yeah.
Can come back to that. Anybody else got any other examples? What about somebody you know? Did you know Princess Diana?
I wish. I used to dream that she'd be my future mother-in-law, but it never happened. So, no, I didn't know that.
Okay, and what about anybody you know that you felt was a really good leader?
My mum.
Who whipped you into shape?
Yes.
But what is that serious comment?
Yeah.
What makes her a good leader?
Because she managed to address everyone in a very subtle way that we all end up doing what she wants, but it seems to be our idea.
That's interesting. It was, in other words, she managed to get a situation where you thought it was your idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you followed that.
Yeah, and also in business, my mom had businesses and she was managing everything just in a very interesting...
Did she have a very organised mind? How did she do that?
I think so, yes.
Must have had lots of little compartments and organised things.
Yeah,
Okay.
who knows what's in her mind, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
worked.
Yeah. Right, and what about, have you two seen any? I mean, have you had any?
When you said it, like a friend of mine came to mind immediately, and it wasn't a business setting, it's never, it's just
No.
been that we have a large extended group of friends, and she is always the person that coordinates everybody, makes sure that everybody is doing what they want to be doing within it, and I think of her as having really good leadership skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you got any?
I'd probably say some managers I've worked for have been good leaders and good team motivators.
What's the difference between a leader and a manager? Is there a difference?
I would say a leader inspires more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mm.
I just wanted to tease out what we think good leadership actually is.
I read something about this, but I forgot.
It's okay, you don't need to have read it. It's just...
Yeah, the manager, it doesn't inspire, it doesn't allow you to be, it's just giving orders kind of thing. Whereas a leader is inspiring and allow you
bringing people
to
with
grow. Yeah, allow you to grow.
Yeah.
Not just do what he wants or to manage you to do something. It's inspiring you to follow his example or
somebody you say, right, okay, yeah. Okay. I mean, I've had a few bosses that have been really good leaders, I think. Actually, one of the funny stories that I often say when I talk about leaders is the time I met somebody called Alex Ferguson. You know, I met Alex Ferguson some years ago, and it was quite interesting from a leadership point of view, and it was just a fleeting meet, really, serendipitous to some extent. My sister has, she's a businesswoman, and she's got old people's homes. She's got quite a lot of them, and she got wind of Alex Ferguson coming up to see the oldest Manchester United fan, who was in one of her old people's homes.
Oh.
Yeah, so Alex Ferguson drove on his own from Manchester down to Leicester to meet this oldest Manchester United fan. You know, and he turned up, and my sister had told me that he was going to be there, so I thought, I'll just pop in. So, but what was interesting was the way he worked with that old lady. You know, this was an old lady of 100 years old, and she was sitting there, sort of, and Alex Ferguson walked in, and he sat next to her, and he sort of held her hand, you know. He said, he was asking her about her life, you know, and now what happened then? What happened during the war? And where did you go then? And how did your husband die? And when, you know, and that must have been terrible for you. And he was so gentle with her. And this was the manager of Manchester United, you know, world famous, most honoured manager of probably all time in history, and he wasn't asking for people to look at him. He was just going into her mind, you know. And I thought, that's not the manager, that's not the Alex Ferguson that you can see on the television, and I never saw that. And I remember thinking to myself, now that's interesting, because he is somebody obviously going into the minds of other people, and he did that with her, and that was quite a revelation. And he turned out to be such a very charismatic, but not overly, you know, brash like he does on the television. He was quite different. And I remember thinking to myself, well, if he's managing all these egotistical young boys who earn far too much, he must have a style of management or a style of leadership that's unique, you know. And I thought, well, if I was asked the question that I've just asked to you, that's what I would say. Just those few minutes, or, you know, 15 minutes or so with Alex Ferguson made me think that is what we should aspire to be. You bring people with you, you're going into their world and understanding what makes them tick, and then bringing them on, as it were. And I thought that to me is leadership. You know.
Is that regardless of the fact that he's known to like shout in people's faces and like, you know, like he's got quite an in managing players, isn't he known to have quite an aggressive style?
Yes, and
you'd say that regardless of
well, I mean, I can't comment on those particular incidents because I wasn't party to that, but what I did see was him getting into the mindset of this old lady, and actually us all, because he was asking us, oh, well, you know, he's asking my sister and her husband.
So it wasn't a media stunt. There was no.
There was no media there.
There was no reason other than he wanted to come and see.
There was no media, you know, which was interesting, and he'd driven on his own as well, up to Leicester.
But it's very a leader has to be a very good listener to understand, as you say, what makes people tick, because as a manager, you could be telling people do this, do that, and if you never discover or listen to what that person perhaps could do better, you could be wasting lots of opportunities or talent.
Yes.
And in a lot of companies, you see people doing stuff that they could be doing so much better, other things, but because managers don't really listen and get into, you know, what are the interests of these people and
and harnessing them for who they are and what they are, etc. Absolutely. Hello. How are you doing? Yeah. It's all right. You can sit here.
Did Slavi mention?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming here.
No problem.
So we're just going through the leadership part of what we.
It's a side note question for you, John. Then, so if your sister's in business, and you're in business, what's driven you both to be business people? Your parents quite.
Now you're getting to my mindset, actually. Yeah. You've got to realise that I'm one of a large family, right? There's 6 children, you know. I'm one of 6, and I was a son of a immigrant, you know. And I think immigrants tend to be quite go-getters, you know, and I think that's the way it is, you know. So, Polish immigrant family living in a quite poor part of Manchester. We lived opposite a brothel, you know, and I think that was you know, that's very typical, you know, and you know. I think that's my family tend to be either business people or academics. You know, strangely, or in education, I should say, in education. So that's
brought up to be hard-working and
Poles, typical, you know. But I got this idea of this leadership stuff by this meeting with Alex Ferguson, and you missed this. You know, Alex Ferguson. I met Alex Ferguson once, and I remember thinking, now that's what makes him a really good leader. And it was just that he sort of managed to get into the minds of the people he was with. He was quite charismatic, but not aggressive like he appears. Now, of course, he probably has to be at times, or he's probably got very clear demarcation lines about what is good and what is bad approaches or behaviours or expectations and norms and beliefs and stuff like this. But he was not the way he appears on the television at all.
And he's known for having a respect of the players.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Regardless of that.
And I thought, well, that is, you know, he's got some characteristic there that I never saw, and I don't see very often in people. You know, the really going into, you know, he met one of the oldest Manchester United fan alive, apparently. That was the story. And he was asking her about her life. This is Alex Ferguson, you know, who'd actually come, you know, all the way from Manchester to Leicester to see this old lady, you know. And I thought, well, that's quite without the television or media, you know. I thought, well, that's really, really strange, that, you know. Anyway, that was my my view on leadership. And coming back to your story about the difference between management and leaders, I've got one directly from the 3D printing business, because I've told you that they are technical. The people who work in there are technical, and so they manage people technically. So they'll tell people, let's say one of the guys what to do. It'll be like this: you do this, just exactly what you've just said, and then they'll go away and they'll come back and they hasn't done it. So, have you done this? You know. Why not? Because I told you half an hour ago that I don't need to do it. You know, and he gets frustrated. This is the technical manager. You know, and then he comes back to me and he says, "Oh, he's bloody useless. He just didn't do what I say." You know, and I say, "Well," and I'm thinking, "Well, don't say it in that way, then." You know, and you know what? The next thing I hear, he's starting to put CCTV up to watch him. Oh, no. I think, oh my God, a technical solution to a human problem, and it's just not going to work, you know. So you know that I think is a good leader somehow has to get into the mindsets of people and bring them with you, you know, in a sense.
They have to be human, don't they?
I think so, you know, and I think you have to know the self and actually have humility in your predisposition towards other people. You know, it's not a technical exercise.
Yeah.
This, you know, that was just my view, and I'd like you to explore that and maybe observe leaders and leadership. But I've got a little questionnaire for you, right? On page 15. Let's see. It's just a self exploration of you as a leader. I'd just like you to answer those questions, 1 to 20. Take your time, there's no hurry. Just have a think about them. when you've done the questionnaire, which I think many of you have. Oh yeah, you've got into that. Yeah, the next bit.
Yeah.
Do we locate our score?
Yeah, then locate your scores. Let's see where you think you are.
Got the y-axis,
Yeah. Right, let's have a look. Showing off.
That makes me uncomfortable. Where does that come on it?
Well, you know, if I was going to just guess, just by knowing you, I've only known you a couple of hours, that's where I'd probably put you.
Okay.
You know? But not here.
No. Middle of broad.
Yeah. I mean, it's only based on a self-diagnostic, and it's also over some really depth questions.
Well, I mean, yeah,
What
I've
was
been
this?
in much situations about
What was that?
Some of it's a bit
Meaning
hypothetical for
exactly.
me.
you
Yeah.
scored really high.
Yeah.
I'm really bad
Is
at
that
pulling
good?
these things out again, actually. Do I need to go back and try and
Which one is the? This is the Y. This one.
Yeah,
This is the Y and this is the X.
that's right.
Oh, okay.
Are you a team leader?
It's interesting, actually, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
very true.
Ask our employees to do this as well.
apparently.
No, we should.
Yeah.
Why you
We'll be
say
interested.
Think of us.
Yeah. They would have a very different view, I guess, of this. It was interesting the way you got your X and Y mixed up. So you came out impoverished. No, it's fine. No, but knowing you, I'm not surprised that you're sort of in that. And But I mean, this is not really science, I suppose.
Everybody's the same.
Sorry? Yeah, similar. You end up in the same sort of thing. But that's a self-diagnostic, which actually, I suppose, is going to be flawed. And of course, the questions in it are flawed too, because it says things like, so before you get onto your pedestal, I enjoy working in teams. Well, that might depend on context as well, or I'm able to speak clearly to others,
Yeah,
Again,
I've never been in a situation to handle an employee complaint. I just thought, yeah, I probably would be all right with that.
Yeah. But nonetheless, it's interesting, and there's quite a lot of these self-diagnostics type things that you can sort of bring out and be more aware of. But one thing I wanted to emphasise in doing this is actually that a leader is actually quite a different thing to a manager. And actually a leader has certain traits. I've got a few slides as well. And I'm just knitting the two bits together. The bit that we did this morning, which was really about negotiating. Unfortunately, we weren't here, but that negotiation often is with employees or with other stakeholder groups or with clients, and we're trying to actually bring them together. One of the things that I feel quite strongly in the crowdfunding business is that we've fired up people a lot, in terms of the possibilities with the crowdfunding. So the City Council giving us pieces of land, not giving us, but we happen to buy, but they've been very, very good with how they've tried to make it all work for us, is us trying to show and demonstrate that we want them to be we want people in the council to come with us on our journey into crowdfunding, because we see it as really beneficial for society. If we can build more houses on brownfield sites in sustainable ways, they should be celebrating, and trying to help us. And we're trying to show that sort of passion and bringing them with us in just the same way as we would in leadership, essentially. So once the negotiations, negotiation and leadership sort of fit together in my mind, essentially. And these are a few quotes that I hope you can see where they're coming from. So, for example, leadership is about asking questions of self, right? Which is an interesting one. It's not telling people what to do, it's actually knowing self. How can I interact with people to improve their performance? Give them enough stretch to keep them motivated and help them realise their own potential, because they'll be much happier in that. I mean, there's a whole set of value statements in all of this, but that is a classic sort of definition. How can I negotiate them at their level, with them, in their own minds, and get the best out of their actions and energy to achieve specific goals? That's what leadership seems to be about. So we've done that. There's quite a lot of literature around leadership and leadership styles, etc. And you'll find that the literature is around either one of these three: the charismatic leader, the JFK, big statement, focus on the relationships that actually entails or results in. And then they've got the transactional leadership, where we usually are using organisational structures to lead through. I would say most managers or people in the university are very transactional in their approach, because they have to be, because it's a massive big structure. If you probably see the same sorts of traits in city councils or NHS, we've got transactional leadership there, which emphasises and focuses in on the organisational structures to drive behaviours, which is typical of a large business, which is probably not so relevant to you starting your own businesses. But I would probably say small businesses, you will be expecting to see that more charismatic relationship, charismatic leadership type approach. Then there's a third category that's typical as well. We call it transformational leadership. This is where I think that good consultancy comes in, really, where you actually there trying to show leadership to try and encourage change, encourage the changes and perception changes that need to happen before any real change can happen. But I would have thought the combination of 1 and 3 are where we need to be as business leaders. You need to be selling your products, your services. You need to be actually creating new structures, new norms, and pushing the boundaries of people that you need to bring with you. You know, now I know that we have no organisation in terms of lots and lots of people working for us, but we do have actually. If you're in a small business, you've still got to have a whole set of people working for it, in a way. You might not have employees. Well, in the crowdfunding business, I've got city councils, I've got lawyers, I've got accountants, I've got the sales people, I've got the construction people. None of them work for the business, but I've still got to show the leadership to bring them to do the things that we need to do and bring them with us. You know, and sometimes that will break down, and sometimes it will be frustrating, and sometimes they go off on different tangents, etc. But the leadership process still exists, and I could even list out those stakeholder groups and start working on trying to improve my leadership within each of those groups, not just with individuals in those groups, but with those kinds of stakeholders. Now, I think personally, if you're in a small business, you have no option because you don't have the resources. Last session that we did a month ago, we were looking at the resource constraints that we were all under. You know, lack of money, lack of people, lack of, you know. But this, to me, doing effective negotiation and then effective leadership can bring a lot of resource to you, actually, that you don't realise you've got to hand, in a way. You know, how can we possibly have got a crowdfunding business up and running? Because that's like starting a bank, if you think about it. People putting money in to build houses. How do you do that? Without sort of bringing people with you. You know, it's complex and messy, but that is what I believe to be an absolutely essential skill of a small business person, to bring those stakeholders with you. And I'd like to start looking at those stakeholders in your businesses and how you're going to try and bring them with you, you know, in this leadership style. So that's part of the work. But let's just go through a few of the other bits and bobs on these slides. There's just a few slides here I think might be quite useful. I've got a slide here which is saying what leadership is not. Because it's that bringing people with you that's so important, and using that power to just, you know, I've put selfish or personal gain, aggrandising the ego, self-gratification, dealing with personal anxieties, or manipulating people. You know, those are kinds of things that sometimes you see in organisations, but actually that's not good leadership at all. That's the reverse. In the literature on leadership, and the literature often talks about how the characteristics, and then, of course, the inner side of the underneath. If you pull out, take away all the guff, right at the heart of it is a leader who has certain requirements, and those people who somehow are able to not just pander to their immediate goals and the immediacy of human stuff tend to be the leaders. You know, in other words, they're not just pampering their own ego at a given moment in time. You know, they're looking beyond that in a given relationship. You know. So, I mean, I've put as the final bullet point, acting like children or animals that are reacting to situations, knee-jerk. You know, I don't think good leadership is just a knee-jerk reaction to situations when you feel anxious or something like this. You know, I feel that my business partner in the crowdfunding is a great negotiator, but I'm not so sure he's a good leader. You know, to be honest, he's a really good negotiator, but as a leader, he tends to react to things. He gets so intense about things, he can upset people really quite quickly. You know, and I think there needs to be something that has to be working towards a greater goal, a bit more considered, a bit more careful. You know, in all of that. This is something interesting, I thought, because it says 60 to 75% of people who worked in an organisation said the most stressful thing about their work was not the work, it was their boss. You know, it's almost like saying an awful lot of people are put into positions of power in organisations, but they're not really good enough, because people shouldn't be feeling like that. You know, if they're putting fear of God into their employees, it's not actually going to be that constructive. You know, these are a few myths of leadership as well. First of all, this is my belief anyway. One of the myths of leadership is that it's rare. Actually, I don't agree with that. I think everybody's got leadership in them. You know, it's almost like discovering it. We've got to discover it and explore it and show how we can bring people with us in different situations in a considered, carefully crafted way. You know, I don't think it's that rare. I think inherent in human beings, they have it, generally speaking. You know, the second myth of leadership that I would argue is that it's mainly found at the top of an organisation. You know, again, I just can't see that. A lot of people who are not at the top of an organisation, or not the senior manager or whatever else, they are perfectly good leaders and are actually, and they can be really good leaders. I was sitting in an exec meeting not long ago, and the boss of the place I was in, I won't tell you where it was, actually sat down and started talking about how he'd reorganised the structure, and he said, and at the top is me, I'm the king. Christ almighty, that's not the way to do it, is it? You know, you know. So I find that even at the top of organisations, it's quite the reverse. People are quite incompetent a lot of the time, certainly as leaders. You know. The other myth of leadership is that it's about being superhuman. Again, it's not. I think it's for me at least, and from my experience of different organisations, both as a consultant and then academic and business person, I just think actually it's those people who know the self, really, who can articulate things in such a way that brings people on. And the other myth of leadership is that you can only do it if you're male. You know, probably 4 of you at least agree with that. No, but I do think that's a ridiculous assumption as well. You know, there's quite a lot of literature around leadership and how people move from role to role in given situations. You know, so for example, we talked about Alex Ferguson and how he was able to get into the mindset of the old lady, and of course I could see that being a likely outcome of how he handled these stupid boys who earn too much, who are quite good at kicking a football around the field, you know, and I could almost see that. But actually, I think a good leader has to have demarcation lines as well, you know, and has to change role to some extent in different situations. And there might be times when there needs to be a certain coerciveness in the way they conduct themselves, you know. It can't be always a namby-pamby, fluffy, oh, let's bring everybody on and we're all happy, clappy type. I think there are rules behind this as well, and structure is quite important, and at least defining the demarcation lines between what is appropriate and what is not appropriate should be easily understood by those people who the leader is leading, you know. Of course there are different types of rewards, and there are, you know, different types of power base based on particular roles. So for example, expertise is often seen as legitimising a given leader in their leadership role. And the personality, of course, those types. But I personally think people who are able to move around this and negotiate it well, I think are quite powerful people on the whole. I remember one OD consultant that I know very, very well, and he said to me once, you know, I think to some extent, if you are in a situation when you have to say something that actually might be either controversial or difficult, the powerful person, the leader, should be able to say it. You know, I know that sounds a bit ridiculous, you know, but you know, like when you're in a situation where you're not allowed to say something, but you know it's true. You know, a good leader is able to say it because they'll present it in a particular type of way. You know, he gave me an example, a really stupid example, because it was actually just at the point when we were both at some black tie do, and they were giving us champagne. You know, and he said, for example, I need some beer. I'm not having champagne, which was not the protocol at all. You know, but he was prepared to just maybe step out of the norm. You know, I know that's a stupid example, but you know that is the kind of thing. You know. You'll see in the literature that leadership and followers is always the way it's looked at. We're going to be looking at your followers, okay? Because you're going to have to do these things. You're going to have to, this month, I'm hoping that you'll set up one negotiation to see if you can make it work better than you would have done otherwise. See what you can make of that. And then I'm going to actually ask you to identify key stakeholders in a given situation where you're going to try and pull them into your objectives, essentially. So this is you as the leader, and you're going to pull these followers into achieving certain objectives. You're going to have to deal with individuals, possibly, or with groups of individuals. Okay. It might be that you've got a particular supplier, you know, that you want to pull into your particular. I mean, I know that that's your negotiation, so you might want to choose something else. Or you know, you might be talking to John Rainford. You know, you want to pull him in because he's a resource that you might want to use, and you're going to try and get him to be almost like a follower of your vision, and he's going to be saying, "Whoa, that's such a good idea, and we could work together on this, and I'm prepared to put my time and effort into helping you achieve those goals." You know,
yeah.
You know, that's what I'm trying to find in your monthly activity. Okay. What have I put here? I can't remember it now. Obviously, when you do that, when you start talking to people, I'm not talking about the negotiation now. I'm talking about bringing people into the vision of what you're going to be presenting. You've got to be able to, in a very clever way, articulate the goals because they have to be there. You know, but you wouldn't say, let's say to John Rainford, "Oh, my goal is to produce lots and lots of," you know. He's got to see his role in achieving your goals, you know, in that sense. And I think you've got to present yourself in a particular way as well. You know, you've always got to give him the sense of who you are and where this could take both you and him as you work together. This brand image type of thing.
So a bit of my story and my goals.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah, you've got goals, but don't talk to them. I mean, I wouldn't articulate it like that. I wouldn't say, "Oh, my goals are." You know.
Yeah.
But he must have a sense of where your goals are at the end of the conversation. and he'll be pulled into your world a bit and pulled in to hopefully helping you with those goals. Now I can tell you now that John Rainford would love to work with you, right? But he's got to see what's in it for him as well. You know? So you're going to have to pull an interaction with him in your leadership style that is actually going to pull him into this great idea that you've got, which is around the electronic distribution of stories for disabled people using his technology. He'll love it.
Is it normal to worry about situations like that? Because I probably, like, it's comforting that you said that he'd love to work with me, but I'd go away and worry about it. I'd be like, oh my god. Does that make sense?
You know something, I think that's a very nice question, and it's a very important question, you know, because we all have those anxieties, those types of things, because we're human, you know, and I think maybe overcoming them is the key, you know, just recognising that John Rainford is just a human being like you are, you know, and there's nothing special about it, not him or his technology, you know, but there are some opportunities if we work together. I wouldn't worry about it, but no, I can't say that, I shouldn't say that. And what I would say is, knowing you from what I can see why you're worrying about it. But it'll be fine.
Okay.
You know? It will be.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, let me know.
Okay. Oh, it's interesting that you can see why I worry about it. If you can tell me, that would be good. I don't know why I worry about it.
Well, I don't want to judge you or anything like this, but we all have our different personas and relationships and perceptions of them.
I'm a deep thinker, yeah.
And you quite maybe self-aware, which is actually quite. It's not a long way away from sort of not necessarily sort of being pushy. You're not like that, really. I don't think, but I can. That's why I say I can see why you might be a little bit reticent. But actually, it'll be just fine, you know. And opening the dialogue with John, who you don't know yet, you might find that actually that's quite good fun.
Yeah.
You know? And it will be fun. Absolutely certainly. But the bigger point of what you've articulated there is the inner self. Something about the inner self, being more aware of it and overcoming it. You know, because we've all got those issues. Yeah. Interesting. Any other questions or points? It's going to be an exciting month because you're going to do a negotiation around the structures that we've articulated, and then we're going to have a go at bringing in some of those stakeholders, trying to show our leadership in the vision of what we're trying to achieve. Okay? Those are just a few of the points, but what I'm going to ask you, there's just a few other points I'd like to raise before we get into the next part of the workbook. There was this very famous guy who worked for the British Army in the 1980s, some time ago now. His name was John Adair, and he became very famous in leadership, in this field called leadership. I just want to give you a sense of what he said about how he did things, because he became quite iconic and was promoting leadership in the British Army. He sort of like, he wrote loads of stuff at the time. I don't know if he's even still alive now, but he became very famous in the British Army. And what he was trying to do was to try and bring on those people who had leadership in them, and to make them the leaders in the British Army. And these are a few of his ways and means. In his case, of course, he was working in a very large organisational context where leadership was absolutely key. You know, you can imagine soldiers in the field, for example, having to show leadership to others and bring them on. And so he used to have this scoring mechanism and for assessing leadership potential. And if people scored quite high, I think it was 8, 9 and 10, they would be put into the training for leaders in the British Army. Those scoring 6 or 7, he would categorise and say, well, okay, they've got potential, but they're not quite there yet. I don't know quite. He probably did an exercise a bit similar to the one we've done, really, but probably a bit more sophisticated. And then anything below that, he just said, forget it. I'm not even going to entertain it. You know, and it wasn't. Of course, I've just said that everybody's got leadership in them, and I still would maintain that. But John Adair's approach was saying, you've just got to be realistic. Some people are not born leaders, you know, not good enough for the British Army at least. And so he went through this quite rigorous process of trying to identify those individuals and then bringing them on, essentially, to be a leader. But then he concentrated on 3 things, essentially. And he said the core of leadership must be around these things. Obviously, it's the task. So when you talk to John Rainford, we want to have a very clear idea of task. What is it that you think he could help you with? You know, and we've got to try and make sure that he understands and also buys into the task. Right? John Adair did that as well. In every situation, everybody must understand what the task is that you want to get completed, you know, at some stage. At the early stages, of course, you'll be probably exploring the nature of the task and how John could formulate the task with you, you know, because he's got to own it. A bit like I think you made that point. Other people have to own the problem to some extent, you know. So, but John Adair also started talking about developing the team. So you've got the task and the team to achieve it. And of course in the British Army that would be very typical. You've got a team of people. It might be just you and John in this case, but it might be more than that. I know John's got a team of people in his place to apply the Darwin matrix to different contexts, and he will probably put you or ask you to engage with some other people. So you've got a team approach to the task, but you've also got to work with the individual, at the individual level. And this is where I think leadership can get quite hard work, because you're actually having to get into the mindset of individuals who are in the teams performing the task. And that's what John Adair built all his work around, how these things could work, should work, and or perhaps how well they were working in given situations, essentially. So I'm going to just jump a few slides here and ask you to do the next little exercise, because during the month I was hoping that you would identify one area, right, one core task that you're going to get people around you to help you with. Okay, I'm not sure what the task needs to be. I'm giving you an example of, you know, getting hold of John Rainford and bringing him into your project, which is building your business. I'm not prescribing that, you do whatever you like, but could we have a think about it? And this example on page 20, right, of the workbook, right, I've tried to depict it like this. You know, I just plucked this out of a project that I was involved in at the time, and it was in the OD area really, but post-harvest losses. It was a project around. But the thing was, in this particular context, we were concerned to try and improve part of a system in an international development context. and there were sets of different stakeholders and groups of people that we knew we had to bring with us. Okay, so I was hoping that during the class today you'd have 5 or 10 minutes thinking about one area that you're going to lead. Essentially, that's the central bit, and then identify the stakeholders. Who is it? What groups of people or what individuals we need to bring with us in order for them to help us achieve whatever we're achieving in the middle bit. Right? That, I'm hoping, will be the basis upon which you're going to have a go at this in practice during the month. So it just needs a little bit of thinking about. So if you don't mind, if you have five minutes thinking it through, who the stakeholders are, what the task actually is, and then we'll share it with each other and just discuss each one. Is that okay?
I hear this word stakeholders a lot. What does it actually mean?
I could give you a Kantian view on this.
What view?
These usually at the face value, it usually means people, individuals, or groups of individuals who have some stake in a given part of your project. Now that's the literal sense. My view is that actually to deepen that understanding, you have to go into the values. What are the value sets that these individuals or groups actually are trying to do? If I went into two different situations, let's say a big bureaucratic organisation such as the health service, and we might talk about a task, I might have to couch it in language which is all about their understanding of their task in their value set, But you might go into a completely different, you might go to a GP surgery, and it might still be in health, but they would have a very different set of values around, not structure, etc. Probably just about individuals. And, maybe that's not such a good example, but stakeholders usually means the people or groups of people who have a stake in the project, who might be affected by the project. In your case, you're building a business, that's your project. But it also indicates values, the value sets of those individuals.
Okay.
So, that central bit doesn't need to be your whole business. It's the thing that you're going to try and do this month to try and push and bring resource into your business to achieve a certain goal. So I'll give you a few minutes to think that through and monitor that. Yeah. No, just leave that. Right. If it's all right, I'd like to just discuss these, just a couple of minutes, just to explore the potential dynamics that might happen in each one. So I'm assuming that in the month we're going to have a go at bringing some stakeholders with us, like a leadership. So I can notice you've written something very interesting down there. What's that?
I'm offering my first work experience.
Right, okay. Okay. Yeah, good.
So I've said that the people, that the stakeholders in this are going to be the girl that I'm offering this work experience to, the job centre who have arranged it with me. Is this, am I on the right track here?
Yeah, this is okay. This is good.
Okay, good. Bear Hugs' reputation. I don't know if that is actually a stakeholder, but for me it's something I'm wary of by bringing someone new on board.
I think that's an interesting one because that's what you are selling to them. You know.
Okay, so that's more what I'm bringing them.
Yeah, you've almost got to say this is my vision, the reputation, the branding, the ethos, the ethics, the and you're selling it to Hannah and the job centre as something really worthwhile. You know.
Yeah.
And they, because they sense that, or hopefully they will, they'll be saying, whoa, yeah, this is going to be really great, you know, positive, and, you know. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So tell me about this one.
So I thought that, because you said about how it's the people or groups of people that are affected by this thing that's happening. So me bringing someone on board, if she's packing and sending out my boxes, the people who are buying them are therefore
absolutely. Yeah, they are the beneficiaries or victims of the way you lead here.
Yeah. Because
if she doesn't do things well, or if she feels threatened that you know you're going to beat her up or something, you know, I'm not saying you would, but she won't do the job well.
No.
It's your leadership style which will determine the degree to which she's buying into that and challenging herself to improve all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so absolutely, these are stakeholders.
Yeah.
And you are serving them in one form or another, really, in the end. It's gone.
I've got the workstation staff because this is someone who is coming into the environment. My posting of my boxes is all done through the central workstation thing. So this is someone new they're going to be interacting with. I need them to be on board.
So you're selling the whole thing to them as well? Okay.
Yeah. Very indirectly, my suppliers say everything went pear-shaped because I had this new person on board. It could affect, I don't know, people might stop buying. I therefore can't.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. It possibly is, but nonetheless, you can explore the degree of tenuousness and include it or exclude it as a result. But I think that's fine. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
So you're bringing somebody on into your company, and you've got stakeholders who you're going to bring on to help the whole process work more effectively. That's exactly the kind of thing we should be doing. Let's have a look at yours.
Okay, with the John Rainford example, I thought that was quite simple because I just saw it being me and him. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I picked a different.
That's fine.
I picked a different event. I'm not sure if it's going to be within the next month or not, but I'd say within the near future, doing a book launch event. For example, it seems quite simple, but there's a lot of different stakeholders that I'd need to communicate with. It would have to be if I want any speakers to attend, any graphic designers in terms of advertising that would be required, the audience that I want to attend the event, arranging the venue. I'd have to interact with different types of people. If I want the local media to be involved, whether that's newspaper and radio interviews, a photographer for some decent pictures, some volunteers would be good to get on board, and catering if that would apply at the event.
Yeah, that's all really, really good.
Is that wrong?
No, it's not.
What am I like? Sorry.
No. What you're going to do, this is the thing that you're going to try and achieve, and you need people to help you achieve it. Don't you?
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is identify those people who are going to have a role in this, and we're going to lead them through the process and achieve an effective book launch.
So would it not be a photographer, volunteers, like a
Yeah,
restaurant?
no, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's absolutely fine. So what I'm going to try and ask you to do is identify how you're going to bring them into this whole thing, book launch thing, you know. How you're going to lead them through the process.
Drive them.
Well, you could try that.
Oh.
But I'm assuming that we don't have much cash, you know,
Yeah.
for bribes.
Yeah, I was only messing.
But I know you are. But nonetheless, that's what I'm after you doing.
Okay.
I'd like you to take one event or issue in your business and have a go at doing that leadership role, you know, pulling people into it and making it happen so that they make it happen for you as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, for example, you've got people dealing with media. How are you going to make them work for you, almost? I mean, if it's newspapers and radio, it sounds like you're going to have to pay them. But are there people out there that can help?
Yeah, I think so.
Bring them in then. Bring them in.
Okay, yeah. Like in terms of newspaper and radio, I've worked with these people before, so it's like the contacts that I've already got. I probably
bring them into the whole ethos of this and trying to develop your, you know, leadership in that process is what I'm after.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Sheffield Live TV. They've got it.
Yeah, with Jimmy Beach. Yeah.
Anyway, yes. What was yours?
I'm trying to think about the area of change for the next month. It's probably going to be this new contract we've won. Normally we get about 3 houses a week on, and that's quite easy to manage. We've just taken on 15 apartments every Friday morning, so that's quite a significant change that I can't really see beyond that at the minute.
Yeah.
But stakeholders required for that is shifting around my existing cleaners' schedules, recruiting a whole new set of cleaners, making sure I've got enough cleaning supplies, so dealing with my suppliers, we've had to take on a partnership with the dry cleaners, because typically we never did bed linen, but for 15 apartments we had to say yes, we'll do that. So now I've got a relationship with the dry cleaners, so they're taking the sheets every Friday and returning them. And there's obviously the stakeholder of the client, keeping them happy throughout this contract.
Okay, there's real scope there. You know, I'm also I think that's absolutely right.